Welcome to the Witty Wallet, the podcast where I shed light on financial topics that matter most to you. I'm your host, Kristoffer Fu, founder of Mavenbridge Capital, a human first financial planning company based in Orange County, California. And today we have an enlightening episode for you. We're diving deep into the critical differences between investment advice and financial advice, and why it's crucial for you to be aware of them. So let's get started. So, investment advice and financial advice, they're not the same thing, guys. As popular belief that most people think they're the same exact thing, they're actually very, very different. And why I think people think it's the same thing, because I ask them. I ask, new clients that I meet, I ask them, do you know the difference between financial advice and investment advice? And they usually tell me, well, doesn't it have to do with managing money and putting your money into investments? And I say, well, yes, that's investment advice. Financial advice, on the other hand, is very different. It's the exact opposite, actually. Because when it comes to financial advice, as a planner, the role and our job is to take a look at your entire holistic life, not just so much the bucket of money that you have to invest for the future, but it's also taking a look at a lot of other factors that need to be addressed even before considering looking to put money into an investment, or even looking to before you consider putting money into your 401k. So, what do I mean by that? Well, financial advice can address things such as a budget. Looking at your family budget, do you guys even have a budget? Why is a budget so important? And why is it that most people don't have a budget in the first place? And this is something that I've uncovered through my work, and realized that a lot of people actually don't have a budget. And I think a lot of it is because they just don't know where to start, right? And most people think it's just this very, very daunting task. But in reality, what a budget does is it gives you a foundation. A budget is not meant to be followed biblically, where once you go surpass your budget, you're in big trouble. But what it is meant to do, it's meant to set the foundation for moving forward, because life doesn't move in a straight line, and neither does your spending. Just because you set a budget to spend, for example, $5,000 a month, does not mean that you're going to spend only $5,000 a month. There's going to be times where you're going to be spending more than that. There's going to be times where you're spending less than that. And so the importance of having a budget is really to give you a starting point. It's to give you a foundation of looking at, hey, I have so much income coming in and I have so much in expenses going out. Where am I able to make adjustments in my spending if my goal is to be able to save and put money into my 401k? Because I think for most people, when they get a new job, their employer tells them, oh, make sure you contribute X amount into your 401k because we're going to give you a company match, which is great, which is something that I encourage everyone to do, especially if your company is giving you a free match. You don't know how many times I've heard of stories where I met someone late into retirement and they didn't take advantage of the 401k until years after being on the job. I've heard stories of where people didn't want to put money into their 401k because they preferred to have cash on hand, and the company was going to give them a 5% match. A match is free money, ladies and gentlemen. So if your company offers a 401k, especially where they're going to match it, make sure that you're able to at least put in the matching amount. Now, what I mean by at least you're able to, right? It goes back to having a budget. Before you start to save, you got to make sure that your day-to-day and monthly expenses are taken care of. Otherwise, you might be putting yourself into a lot of credit card debt just to make your expenses, just to cover your expenses while you're putting money away for retirement, right? We definitely don't want that, because the amount of debt, the amount of interest that you accrue on credit cards is far greater than the type of investment returns you can get in your retirement plan. So again, going back to the importance of having a budget. When you have a budget, it gives you a foundation. And the way I like to help my clients set up their budget is break down your expenses into two different categories. You have one category, which is your non discretionary expenses. Discretionary meaning you can make changes, right? So non discretionary means no changes can be made to these expenses. And this typically is going to be your rent, it's going to be your mortgage. If you live in a home that has an HOA, that's in there. It's going to be your utilities, it's going to be your groceries, is going to be your day to day, month to month basic necessities, your living expenses, right? This does not count things like going to Starbucks or, having date nights every Friday night. Those would be what we consider discretionary expenses. And why discretionary? Because again, even though some of us may think Starbucks is necessary for everyday life, in all reality, it is not. It's something that you could scale back on if need be, right? Same thing with, going out and having lavish vacations, once every quarter or whatever it may be. Those are all examples of discretionary expenses. So when you list everything down in those two categories, then the other column you're going to put in your income. If you have wage income, you have rental income. If you're retired, you have Social Security, you have pension income. So you're going to want to list out all of your income sources and obviously subtract from that income all of your expenses. And at the end, you're going to get a net result. Hopefully, it's a net positive, meaning that you're bringing in more money than you are spending out, right? So hopefully it's a net positive. But if it's not and it's showing a negative number, well, this gives you some work to do. It gives you some work to do because what it's basically saying is you're spending more than you're actually bringing in, which is something that we don't want to be in a position put ourselves in, especially if we're trying to save for long-term future goals. But by doing this exercise now, you'll be able to see all of those discretionary expenses that again have flexibility that are not necessities like mortgage or rent or groceries or food or shelter, right? And so go look through those discretionary expenses and see where can I potentially make some adjustments in my financial life. Maybe I don't have to get Starbucks every single day. Maybe I can do it once a week and just brew coffee at home. Or maybe I don't need to go out and spend so much on clothing, once a week or whatever it may be, right? And see what positive difference that's going to make to that end result once you make those adjustments. I'm sure after going through that exercise, it's going to help enlighten a lot of different things as far as, especially into your spending. And so I think that's another reason why a lot of people don't want to or don't even have a budget is because they're afraid to see actually how much they are spending and what they're spending on. In my experience, where I see most expenses, of course, is going to be your living. It's going to be your mortgage, it's going to be things like that. And again, those are things that are necessary. But where I've also seen a lot of it is in dining out, right? Entertainment. That's where I see a lot of my clients where a lot of their heavy spending comes out. And so we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, maybe we don't need to go out that often or have that many date nights. Maybe we can do date night at home and cook a nice dinner for each other. That could cut down cost a lot and give you that room, that ability to be able to save. So again, having this budget in place is not meant to cripple you and say, okay, you can only spend this much. However, it is going to give you a starting point. It's going to give you some guidance and a reference, and it's meant to also be adjusted, right? So every 3 months, every 6 months, as you continue to go along and you start to track your expenses, see how you've done. And if there's wiggle room to make more adjustments, well, perfect. Again, it's not meant to be something where you just go cold turkey and cut out all your expenses and you're miraculously just going to be able to have the habit of saving. This is something that you have to have as part of your daily and monthly practice when it comes to your financial life. So again, start by creating that budget. Just put it on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be fancy. Just put income for the month, expenses, and break down the expenses from non-discretionary, meaning necessities, and your discretionary, meaning flexibility. We can make adjustments and we can make changes. Another key issue I want to talk about briefly is credit card debt. We are starting to see credit card debt on the rise again, coming out of COVID. And this is alarming because credit card debt, ladies and gentlemen, is a debt you don't want to get yourself in trouble with, because the amount of interest that you're paying on this credit card debt is high. It's in the double digits, in the 20+%. And obviously, you have better credit, it's not going to be as high, but it's still in double digits. So, reasons why this is important. I've come across throughout my years in doing things like budgets for clients and looking at their plans and saying, well, they got a good deal of money in investments, which is great, in cash and some investment portfolios. But I noticed on the other column of, as far as debt, they had a decent amount of credit card debt, 10, 20, $1,000 in credit card debt, while there's a few hundred thousand in investments and a couple, 10, 20, 30,000 in checking account just sitting there. And so I asked them, why do you have this credit card debt? What are we doing in order to address this credit card debt? Because the interest is killing you. It's charging you 20%, and you're only making the minimum payment or slightly above minimum payment. And I tell them, well, why don't you use some of this cash for taking care of that debt? And one of the common answers I usually get is, well, we would like to have cash because you just never know when you need it. Right. And I told them, I completely understand, right? That old adage, cash is king. That's great and all. But let's take a look at the math here. The cash in your bank account, what is the bank paying you to keep that cash in that checking account? For the last several years, it's been 0% or 0.01%. That doesn't even count. So literally, you're not making anything on that cash. And it's been sitting there for a few years, right? And they say, yeah, okay, well, let's take a look at this debt. This debt, 20 grand, you're getting charged per year 20+% in interest charges. Yes, you're making payments and it's slowly going down. And yes, on this side, you have the comfort of knowing that you have some cash. However, you're losing money because, again, you're paying to the bank, whoever has that credit card, you're paying them 20% in interest a year. Well, this other institution is not paying you anything. Even if you had an investment and that money was sitting in your investments, to get 20% on a consistent basis is very, very difficult. So my advice to these type of clients is, let's take care of that debt, because at the end of the day, again, you're wasting money on interest. Let's take the cash that we have here, take care of the debt so we don't pay any more out of pocket for interest. And then that'll allow you to start to rebuild that cash a lot quicker, because again, you're saving now on that extra interest payment. And by the way, now you have that credit line open for emergencies rather than, again, piling on this continuous debt. So if you have credit card debt and yet you also have cash on the side that is not really earmarked for much, or maybe it's just earmarked for emergencies, consider using some of that cash to pay down that high interest debt. The last thing we want is to pay unnecessary fees, unnecessary interest, because again, that's money that's coming out of your pocket that could be staying in your pocket and working towards your future. So make sure you review. If you have credit card balances, make sure you review that. If you have the ability to maybe roll that credit card balance into a new credit card that has a zero interest for so many, months, consider that. That could maybe help your financial situation. But I would definitely say, again, if you have a high balance on a credit card, really consider how can you tackle that debt much sooner as opposed to just letting it continue to grow with the amount of interest that you're paying. Because again, that interest is variable, right? It's going to go up and down. And with rates moving higher and higher, especially all of last year, interest rates and what credit card companies charge are a lot higher than they were several years ago. So really pay attention to those things, especially if you're currently carrying credit card debt. So why do I think investment advice and financial advice are not the same thing? Well, I've been doing this for about almost 17 years. And one thing that I usually like to ask a lot of my clients and new people that I meet is, tell me about your financial advice experience. And most of the common answer I would get is, well, I used to work with an advisor and he recommended that I invest in these certain things that I just really didn't understand, but it seems to be going okay for what I need. And that is a very common answer that I typically get. And why I believe investment advice and financial advice are different things is because they are. Investment advice really is focused on helping you grow your assets, whether that is cash that you have sitting in the bank, money that you're saving towards your retirement inside of your 401k, Roth IRA, whatever it may be. Investment advice is really focused on what type of vehicles you should be putting your money in, whether that is stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, annuities, whatever it may be. Usually there's some type of advice focused on what vehicle you should be parking that money in, right? And hopefully it will help you meet your objectives. On the flip side, however, financial advice is more holistic looking, and it encompasses investment advice in there. And what financial advice really focuses on is not just your money, but it also focuses on everything in your financial life. Focuses on things like, do you have a budget? Are you able to save? Focuses things on insurance, having life insurance, especially for young families with young kids. If you're the main breadwinner of your family, ask yourself, what would happen if you pass away unexpectedly and your spouse and your children are left on this earth? Are they going to be okay? How are they going to replace that income that you, as the sole breadwinner, were bringing and providing for them? Have you adjusted or addressed those potential risks, right? What if you become permanently disabled, or you're older and you're afraid of needing some type of long-term care? Because statistically, 1 in every 3 80-year-olds need some type of long-term care. So if we're talking about statistics and you're thinking about that far ahead, how are you going to be able to address those issues if they do in fact come up? These are issues when it comes to risk management that people don't like to think about. But that's where, as a financial planner, my job is to be a thinking partner for my clients and really help you start to think about these important things. Financial advice also surrounds tax advice. We're not CPAs, but when it comes to the type of investments or where you should be allocating your money into retirement, for example, whether that's setting up a Roth IRA or taking advantage of a health savings account or investing some cash into a taxable investment. A lot of that also revolves around how are those investments or how are those decisions going to impact you from a tax standpoint? Are they going to make you pay more in income taxes, or are they going to be more beneficial for you come tax season or come in the future when you have to worry about paying taxes? Financial advice also revolves around taking a look at retirement planning and helping you think about, what do you want retirement to look like? And I think this is very important to be aware of because, I think most people, especially my generation, millennial generation, finally starting to think about long-term planning and retirement because, we're aging, we're getting there. But I think the idea of retirement is very different than maybe what our parents grew up with the idea of retirement, which for most boomers, it was to work at a company and retire there after working there for 30 years and have a pension and have your home paid off and be able to enjoy that next chapter in your life. And I've met a lot of boomers who really enjoy their retirement, but I've also met a lot of people who are kind of bored, to be honest, in their retirement, and they don't really have much of a plan as far as what they want to do from a day to day. And for me, I look at that as, well, that's very exciting part of your life, because you no longer need to work for anyone, right? But I think a lot of the reason why maybe those individuals don't really have a plan as far as for what they want to do in retirement is because they never challenged themselves. They never thought about, what do I want my retirement to look like? So with a lot of my younger clients, I usually sit down with them and have them close their eyes and envision, what does their retirement look like? Doesn't have to mean that you're going to retire and just sit on the beach and drink Mai Tais every single day. That's not realistic. That's not what retirement is. But envision, what does that look like? And I get a lot of different answers. Um, I'm spending time with my family, my kids. We're in Hawaii and we're able to bring our parents who are older than us, and we're able to see them enjoy their retirement as well. We're able to see our kids who just finished college, and with their new families join us on this vacation. We are having family dinners. We're going to luau's. So having them explain this from a visual sense, not just, I want to retire, but what do you want it to look like, is very important, because by now having these visions, having these understandings of what is most important to you, will then lead into why and how you should be investing your money. Because again, when it comes to investments, it's merely a state of aligning your capital, what you have, and having that align with your values and what's most important to you. If there's no alignment, then your investments really have no purpose, right? I've met a lot of people who had started an investment somewhere else, and they came to me because they were concerned about how the market was going through its volatile stage, as it normally does, and they wanted to pull out of the market. And I asked them, okay, well, what was the reason for investing in the first place? And they said, well, I was at the bank and this guy offered me an account that was going to pay me, 4% better than what I had there. And I only had to keep it there for 1 year. And, the 1 year is almost approaching. And I think I want to take it out because I'm losing money. I said, okay, fair enough. Yeah, you were going to get a good interest rate return on your money. But what was the other reason for investing that money? And they would say, well, I just wanted to make sure my money worked for me. And so it's in those situations where I get it. They had no purpose beyond just making better interest than their savings. They had no purpose of actually investing. They don't know why they actually invested. So it's understandable, by not having that why, by not having that understanding, of course you're going to have no conviction to stick it out, to say, you know what? Yes, the markets may be down, but I'm investing because I want to be able to help my grandkids through college. I want to be able to provide care for my parents when they're older. So I want this money to be meant for that purpose, right? I want it to grow for that reason. And I'm willing to sit through some of these rough times in order to have it work for me in a longer period of time. Having that particular purpose, that why of why you invest, is a thing that's going to help give you that financial freedom, that financial success, because we can't time the markets. No one in their right mind, you can, everyone on the news, they say the market's going to go down 30% in the next couple months. No one can predict that. Okay, let's just get that out of there. No one can time the markets. So you have to understand, first of all, why you're investing, what are your values, what's most important to you, and make sure that aligns with the capital that you have to invest. Otherwise, you're just going to be shooting darts in the dark, literally, right? Because you have no sense of direction. So if you're in the market and you're looking for a professional advisor to help you, and you're really not too sure if you need investment advice or financial advice, again, take the time. Take the time to think about what is most important for you and what are you trying to accomplish. Do you want a partner that is going to be there with you along that journey? Or do you just want a solution? Because again, it's important to understand the difference between the two. Some professionals work strictly in the investments advice role, while others, like myself, we work in the financial advice role, where we take a look at everything from a holistic basis, and we work with you on a year by year basis to make sure that you can achieve all of the goals that you are trying to accomplish. So those are the things that I would suggest. Again, just write it down, what's most important to you um, between the two. And then also, again, talking about our other topics with budgeting and savings. If this is an area that you maybe need help with or need some guidance with, well, that's going to be where you need a financial advisor, someone who can give you that financial advice. Same thing with that credit card debt. There's a lot of blogs out there. There's a lot of articles out there, like the snowball effect of how to tackle credit card debt, that are very helpful and very useful as well too. But again, if you have credit card debt and you have assets that can help maybe eliminate some of that credit card debt, really consider eliminating it, because again, interest rates are high and what you're paying on that debt just to keep it there is very, very high. And so I hope that by understanding the differences between investment advice and financial advice, you guys will be able to make better informed decisions about your financial life. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the Witty Wallet for more insightful episodes on managing your finances. And follow us on social media for ongoing conversations about budgeting, savings, and investing. Happy financial growth, everyone. Take care.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Private Wealth Services, LLC. An affiliate of Kestra is Mavin Bridge Capital, and Kestra Investment Services are not affiliated. Kestra is and Kestras do not provide tax or legal advice. The opinions expressed in this commentary are those of the author and may not necessarily reflect those held by Kestra Investment Services, LLC or Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. This is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Comments concerning the past performance are not intended to be forward-looking and should not be viewed as an indication of future results.